Star Watch Media here at the Hamptons Film Festival 2013 with Eric Steele and your documentary film Kiss the Water. So tell us a little bit about this fairy tale weaved into a documentary.
Sure. I have this sort of strange morning ritual where I read the obituaries first thing every day with my coffee. And 10 years ago, I found this odd obituary for this woman, Megan Boyd, and she made fishing flies in Scotland, about as far north as you can go in Scotland, pretty remote. And I'm not a fisherman. I don't eat salmon. I had never been to Scotland. And in 2001, I wasn't even a filmmaker. So there was almost no reason in the world for me to think that, cutting this out was going to one day, wind me up here. But I pinned it on my wall, and I kept reading it, and the words were like an invitation to some strange, fairy tale world. And one day I was like, all right, I'm just going to get on a plane and go. And I got on a plane, and I flew to Glasgow and drove the 7 hours north to what was left of her cottage. And, it sort of all took off from there. I mean, I heard all these great stories about her life, and people sort of seemed like they knew who she was, but in a way I felt like people were looking at like one slice of her life and weren't really trying to imagine how hard it was and how alone she was in this cottage. She had no electricity and no running water, and if you live in northern Scotland in the wintertime, it gets dark at 2:30 in the afternoon, and so she had a lot of time on her own to think and dream, and I know I kind of imagine that she was like the maiden in Rumpelstiltskin, and she had to take these tiny bits of feather and thread and whip them up into these fishing flies to make a living, and she had to do it over and over and over and over, every day, and like in all good fairy tales, one day the prince is supposed to come, and her fishing flies were so beautiful and so good at catching fish that one day Prince Charles drove up her driveway, and she was like, oh, okie dokie, and she didn't have any electricity or running water, so she like whipped him up scrambled eggs and cooked him over a paraffin lamp, and they had like this connection, this bond, over fly fishing.
So a lot of documentary filmmakers talk about kind of immersing themselves into an environment, and from there the story is birthed. Well, you kind of worked in an opposite way where you almost had to write the script yourself and create your own reality. So tell me about working in that process as opposed to the way most filmmakers work.
Yeah, I actually think for me it was a little bit of immersion and also imagination. I mean, I spent a lot of time in this remote part of Scotland, and I made 7 trips there over 3 years, and we went in every single season, and I kind of collected stories about her and spent a lot of time looking out her window and looking into her world and walking where I knew she walked, and trying to really put myself in her strange shoes. And at the same time I would do that, I would like close my eyes and imagine what her dreamscape would have been like, and that sort of way that dreams intersect and pull threads from your real life into your subconscious and turn them around in funny ways. I tried to imagine that, and sometimes I actually did wake up and say, oh my God, I had a Megan dream, and so all that is kind of woven into the structure of the movie.
So why do you think it is that, the fairy tale has stood the test of time, and we have our modern day fairy tales, which this film is? What about that folklore still is pertinent to our culture?
I think fairy tales are they're like a wish, they're like us trying to figure out the things that we're afraid of and how we hope they will turn out, and I think they deal with those kind of strange psychological questions that that haunt us all the time. And for someone who lived alone, like Megan did, you create fairy tales that sort of say, oh, maybe one day you won't be alone. Maybe one day someone will come, and maybe you'll do something so special that it'll overcome all of your like, let's just say, physical limitations, and transform you. And I think we want to believe that our lives will end up that way. I think we like this idea that our lives will sort of have the shape of a fairy tale or a poem, and will be so neatly tied up. I think the fact that our lives don't usually end up that way makes us want them even more.
So you guys were at Tribeca and Vancouver Film Festival. Now you're at the Hamptons. So are you excited to be here? What's it like premiering the film as opposed to the other festivals?
Well, the cool part about the Hamptons Film Festival for me is that I grew up out here. So, like, I can actually like ride my bike from my house to the movie theater, and I mean, it's a little bit surreal. I remember when I was younger, I had a pony for a while, and you could ride your pony to the Carvel ice cream store in Bridgehampton, and you could get off your pony and tie the pony up to a rail. I know it sounds like impossible, and you could actually run across 27 because there wasn't a lot of traffic, and where the shopping center is there now, there was a drive-in movie theater, so kids could like sneak across and listen to that little cup, that tin kind of radio sound, and watch these movies on the big screen. So it is slightly surreal to be here, like to think that I actually made a movie that the people like some kids can say, oh, I remember when I was little, I saw a movie in the movie theater, and then like how that cycle would repeat.
Yeah, well, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank
It's a pleasure.
you.